We woke up way too close. Now my alien roommate acts like it meant something asterisk. The morning after, the first thing I noticed wasn't the unfamiliar weight across my chest or the strange humming sound coming from somewhere near my ear. It was the fact that my pillow smelled like ozone and starlight, if starlight had a scent, which apparently it did. My eyes cracked open to find myself staring at what looked like liquid mercury hair spread across my shoulder, attached to a very solid, very warm body that definitely wasn't human. "Oh, shit," I whispered, which was apparently loud enough to wake Zephyr. His eyes opened, all three of them. The main two were this incredible shade of violet that seemed to shift between dimensions, while the smaller one in the center of his forehead blinked, lazily, like it was still deciding whether consciousness was worth the effort. For a moment, we just stared at each other, processing the fact that sometime during the night, we'd become a human pretzel with very complicated implications. "Good morning, Cassie," he said in that voice that always made my spine tingle. It was like listening to music played on instruments that didn't exist on Earth. "I trust you slept well." The formal politeness might have been normal for him, except for the fact that his arm was still wrapped around my waist, and one of his legs was tangled between mine. Also, he was shirtless, which revealed the constellation of bioluminescent freckles across his chest that I'd only glimpsed before. When he was adjusting his human disguise projector, "I slept fine," I managed, acutely aware that I was wearing nothing but an oversized t-shirt and underwear. "The question is, why are we?" I gestured vaguely at our current configuration, which looked like we'd been playing Twister with gravity and lost. Zephyr's third eye focused on me with an intensity that made my stomach flip. "You were having nightmares again about the audit, right? The audit. My accounting firm was being investigated for irregularities I had nothing to do with, but which could still cost me my job and my sanity. I'd been stress-eating ice cream and staying up too late going over financial records, trying to find the discrepancies that could clear my name. I heard you crying," he continued, his voice gentler now. "In my culture, we provide comfort through physical proximity during times of distress. I apologize if I overstepped. The thing was, I did feel better, more rested than I had in weeks. The nightmares that usually plagued me, endless spreadsheets morphing into monsters, calculators with teeth, were nowhere to be found in my memory. Instead, I remembered dreaming about floating in warm, safe darkness while someone sang lullabies in a language that bypassed my ears and went straight to my soul. "You sing," I said, because apparently my brain-to-mouth filter was still offline. The tips of his pointed ears darkened with what I'd learned was his species equivalent of blushing. "Only when I believe you are asleep." We were still lying there, neither of us making any move to untangle ourselves, when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Reality crashed back as I saw my boss's name on the screen. "I have to take this," I said, reaching for the phone while trying not to think about how Zephyr's hand slid across my back as I moved. "Cassie, thank God you're awake. We need you in the office now. The investigators found something." My heart sank. "Something bad, something that clears you completely. But we need to go over it before the meeting at 10. I hung up and looked at Zephyr, who was watching me with those impossible eyes. "I have to go, of course." But he didn't move away. Instead, he reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my cheek. "Cassie, yeah, last night meant something to me. I want you to know that." And then he was gone, literally teleporting back to his own room in that way that still made my brain short-circuit. I was left alone, heart racing, skin still tingling from his touch, and absolutely no idea what to do with the fact that my alien roommate had just turned my entire world upside down. With 7 little words, I stared at the ceiling, where I could hear him moving around upstairs, and wondered how the hell I was supposed to focus on financial discrepancies, when all I could think about was the way he'd said my name, like it was something precious. This was going to be a very long day. Mixed signals and coffee grounds by the time I got home from work. I'd convinced myself that I'd imagined the whole thing. The warmth of Zephyr's arm around me, the way his voice had gone soft when he said my name, the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. All of it was just stress and sleep deprivation playing tricks on my mind. That theory lasted exactly as long as it took me to walk through the front door. The apartment smelled like cinnamon and something floral I couldn't identify. Soft music was playing, not earth music, but those haunting melodies Zephyr sometimes hummed that made me feel like I was floating. And there, on the kitchen counter, was a feast that definitely hadn't been there when I left at 7 this morning. "Welcome home," Zephyr said, appearing in the doorway between the kitchen and living room. He'd traded his usual human disguise for his natural form, tall and ethereal, with that mercury hair and skin that seemed to catch light from sources that didn't exist. "I thought you might be hungry." I stared at the spread of food. There were things I recognized: pasta with what looked like marinara sauce, a salad with actual earth vegetables, and things I didn't, a shimmering soup that seemed to move on its own, bread that glowed faintly from within, fruit that looked like it was made of crystallized starlight. "You cooked," I said stupidly. "I prepared sustenance," he corrected, and I caught the hint of amusement in his voice, though I admit I had to research human preferences extensively. "Did you know your species has over 137 ways to prepare the fruit you call apples?" I laughed despite myself. "That sounds about right, Zephyr. You didn't have to do all this." He was quiet for a moment, those violet eyes studying my face. "The meeting went well, better than well. I'm completely cleared." Turns out someone in the IT department was skimming money and using my login to cover their tracks. The relief I'd felt when my boss explained everything came flooding back. I get to keep my job, my reputation, everything. "This pleases me greatly," he said, and the way he said it made something warm unfurl in my chest. We sat down to eat, and I had to admit, alien cuisine was incredible. The glowing bread tasted like honey and sunshine, the shimmering soup was like drinking liquid comfort, and the crystallized fruit burst with flavors I didn't have names for. So I said, twirling pasta around my fork and trying to sound casual, "About this morning." Zephyr went very still. "What about this morning? You said it meant something to you. What did you mean by that?" He set down his utensil, a strange, graceful thing that looked like it had been carved from pearl, and looked at me directly. "In my culture, sharing sleep is not done lightly. It is an act of trust, of intimacy." Intimacy. The word hung between us like a bridge I wasn't sure I was brave enough to cross. "Yes, when I held you while you slept, when I sang to keep the dark dreams away, when you curled into me as if you belonged there." He paused, and I saw his hands tremble slightly. It was the most natural thing I have ever experienced. My heart was beating so fast I was sure he could hear it. "Zephyr, I know this complicates things," he said quickly. "I know I am not what you expected when you agreed to share living space with me. I am not human. I do not understand all of your customs, but I cannot pretend that holding you meant nothing to me." I stared at him, this beautiful, impossible being who had somehow become the most important part of my daily routine, who left me little notes in languages that didn't exist on Earth, who always knew exactly what to say when I'd had a bad day, who had somehow learned to make coffee the exact way I liked it. Even though caffeine was toxic to his species, it didn't mean nothing to me either, I admitted quietly. The smile that spread across his face was like watching a sunrise. "Truly, truly. But Zephyr, I don't know how this works. I don't know what you need, what your people expect, what any of this means for us." He reached across the table and took my hand in his. His skin was warm and felt like silk over steel. "Then perhaps we learn together." I looked down at our joined hands, my pale fingers intertwined with his longer, more elegant ones, and felt something click into place, like I'd been walking around with a puzzle piece missing and suddenly found it in the most unexpected place. "Okay," I said, "but I have rules." "Of course you do," he said, and I could hear the fondness in his voice. "What are they?" "First, no more reading my mind without permission." "I do not read minds. I sense emotions, but I accept your terms." "Second, if this gets weird, we talk about it. No teleporting away to avoid difficult conversations." His third. I blinked slowly, agreed. And third, I took a breath. "No more sleeping alone when I have nightmares." The hand holding mine tightened. "Cassie, you said it yourself. It meant something. And I've never slept better than I did last night." I met his eyes, all three of them, So if we're doing this, whatever this is, then we're really doing it. He lifted our joined hands and pressed a soft kiss to my knuckles. Then we are really doing it. Outside, it started to rain, the kind of gentle shower that made everything smell clean and new inside. I sat holding hands with my alien roommate and wondered how my life had gotten so beautifully complicated. Learning curves and late-night conversation sure weeks into our whatever this was. I learned that dating an alien came with a unique set of challenges. For instance, Zephyr's idea of a romantic gesture was to rearrange the stars visible from our apartment window into patterns that told the story of how we met. Sweet, yes. Also slightly terrifying when the neighbors started asking questions about the unusual astronomical phenomena in our neighborhood. You can't just move celestial bodies because you think it's romantic, I said, standing on our balcony and staring up at what was definitely not the Big Dipper anymore. They are only moved from your perspective, Zephyr said reasonably, coming up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist. And it is a very romantic story. See there? That cluster represents the day you answered my advertisement for a roommate. And that grouping shows the evening you taught me to make pancakes. I leaned back into his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his dual heartbeats against my spine. What's that one? I pointed to a constellation that looked suspiciously like two figures intertwined. His arms tightened around me. That is this morning, when you woke up singing. I had been singing some half-remembered lullaby from childhood that had gotten stuck in my head. I'd been embarrassed when I realized Zephyr had heard me, but he'd looked at me like I'd just performed a symphony. You have to change them back, I said. But there was no real conviction in my voice. If you insist. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head, and I felt more than saw the stars shimmer back into their proper positions. Though I maintain that human astronomy is far less interesting than it could be. We went back inside, and I settled onto the couch to grade papers. I'd picked up some part-time tutoring work to help with the rent now that my accounting job was secure. Zephyr curled up beside me, reading what looked like a book made entirely of light, his feet tucked under my thigh in a way that was becoming comfortably familiar. Cassie, he said after a while, may I ask you something personal? More personal than the fact that you've seen me cry over tax forms, sure. Why are none of your family photos recent? I looked up from the essay I was correcting, a particularly creative interpretation of the Revolutionary War that had Benjamin Franklin inventing the internet, and saw that Zephyr was staring at the small collection of framed pictures on the side table. They're recent enough, I said carefully. The clothing styles suggest they are at least 5 Earth years old, and you never speak to them on your communication device. I set down my pen. This was dangerous territory, the kind of conversation that could ruin the careful balance we'd built. But his eyes were curious, not judgmental, and I found myself answering. My family doesn't really approve of my life choices, I said. The career, the apartment, the fact that I'm 28 and single and apparently wasting my potential. You are not single, Zephyr pointed out. They don't know about you. I saw his expression change and rushed to explain. Not because I'm ashamed. God, Zephyr, you're the best thing that's happened to me in years. But try explaining to your conservative Catholic mother that you're dating someone from another planet. There isn't a greeting card for that. He was quiet for a long moment, processing this. On my world, family bonds are considered sacred. To be cut off from one's birth cluster is a form of death. It's not that dramatic, I said, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. The silence from my family did feel like a kind of death sometimes. We want different things. What do they want? For me to move back home, marry someone they approve of, have children, live the life they planned for me instead of the one I chose. And what do you want? The question was simple, but it hit me like a physical blow. What did I want? For so long, I'd defined my desires in opposition to my family's expectations. I wanted independence, so I moved across the country. I wanted financial stability, so I became an accountant. I wanted freedom, so I stayed single. But sitting there with Zephyr's warm weight against my side, his otherworldly beauty softened by lamplight, I realized my wants had evolved. I want this, I said quietly. I want to come home to someone who cares about my day. I want to wake up next to someone who sings away my nightmares. I want to watch terrible movies and eat ice cream for dinner and have deep conversations about star patterns and children. His voice was carefully neutral. Someday, maybe, if I find the right person to have them with. I looked at him. What about you? What do you want? I want to learn every expression that crosses your face. I want to discover new ways to make you laugh. I want to build a life with someone who sees me as more than just an alien curiosity. Is that what you think I see you as? Sometimes. His admission was so quiet I almost missed it. You are the first human to look at me and see me. Not my differences, not my strangeness, just me. It is both wonderful and terrifying. I set aside my papers and turned to face him fully. Zephyr, you are the most real person I know, alien. Or not, you're genuine in a way that most humans aren't. You say what you mean, you do what you promise, and you care about people without expecting anything in return. I expect many things in return from you, he said with a small smile. Like what? Your terrible singing in the mornings, your habit of stealing my coffee even though you have your own. The way you curl into me when you sleep as if you are trying to crawl inside my skin. His third eye focused on me with that unnerving intensity. Your heart, if you are willing to give it. The words hung between us like a challenge. Outside, the rain that had been threatening all evening finally began to fall, pattering against the windows in a rhythm that matched my pulse. You already have it, I said, and watched his face transform with wonder. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and tasting like starlight. When we broke apart, I could see galaxies swirling in the depths of his eyes. I love you too, he whispered against my lips, and I realized I hadn't even said the words yet. But somehow, he'd known. Mind reader, I accused softly. Heart reader, he corrected, and kissed me again. Family meetings and future plans call came on a Tuesday morning while Zephyr was in the shower. I almost didn't answer a known number. Too early for anything good, but something made me pick up. Cassie, it's Mom. I nearly dropped the phone. We hadn't spoken in 8 months, not since the fight about my life choices and their implications for the family's reputation. Mom, hi, is everything okay? Your father's in the hospital. Her voice was tight with the kind of control that meant she was barely holding it together. Heart attack. He's asking for you. The world tilted sideways. I'll catch the next flight. There's something else. She paused, and I could hear the weight of whatever she wasn't saying. We know about your roommate, Cassie. Your neighbor Mrs. Henderson has a daughter who lives in your building. She's been talking. My stomach dropped. Mrs. Henderson's daughter was Jenna Morrison, who lived 2 floors down and had the unfortunate combination of too much time on her hands and a pathological need to be the center of attention. If she'd seen Zephyr without his disguise, Mom, we need to talk. All of us, as a family. She hung up before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone and wondering how my life had gotten so complicated so quickly. Zephyr appeared in the doorway, hair still damp and concern written across his features. He'd heard enough of the conversation to know something was wrong. Your father, he said. It wasn't a question. Heart attack. I have to go home. I was already moving, pulling clothes out of the closet, trying to think practically when my brain wanted to spiral into panic. And they know about you. Somehow, he went very still. What do they know? I don't know. But whatever it is, it's enough that my mother felt the need to prepare me. I stopped packing and looked at him. Zephyr, I'm so sorry. I never wanted. Cassie. He crossed the room and took my hands in his. Your father is ill. You need to be with your family. Everything else is secondary. Come with me. The words were out before I'd even realized I was thinking them. Zephyr blinked all 3 eyes in surprise. Come with me, I repeated, more certain now. I'm tired of hiding what we have. I'm tired of pretending that the most important person in my life doesn't exist because it might make other people uncomfortable. Cassie, I am not human. Your family already disapproves of your choices. Introducing them to an extraterrestrial partner may not be the wisest course of action. Maybe not. But you said you wanted my heart, and it comes with complications. My family is one of them. I squeezed his hands. Besides, if we're going to build a life together, they need to know who you are eventually. He was quiet for a long moment. and I could practically see him thinking through all the potential complications. My people are not supposed to reveal themselves to humans without cause. You have cause. I'm your cause. Something shifted in his expression. You're asking me to choose between my people's laws and your family's acceptance. I'm asking you to choose me. The words came out fiercer than I'd intended, the same way I'm choosing you over their expectations. He lifted our joined hands and pressed them against his chest, over the dual heartbeats that had become the soundtrack to my contentment. Then I choose you. I will always choose you. The flight to Ohio was surreal. Zephyr wore his human disguise, but I could see the energy it cost him to maintain it. By the time we landed in Columbus, there were fine lines of strain around his eyes. You can drop it in the car, I told him as we picked up the rental. Just until we get to the hospital. What if someone sees? Then they see. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking garage. Zephyr, what's the worst that could happen? They think I'm dating someone unusual. They already think that. He laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. You have a point. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and fear. Dad was in the cardiac unit, hooked up to machines that beeped reassuringly. He looked smaller than I remembered, older, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. Cassie girl, you came. Of course I came. I hugged him carefully, mindful of the wires and tubes. How are you feeling? Like I got kicked by a horse, but better now that you're here. His gaze shifted to Zephyr, who stood quietly in the doorway. You must be the famous roommate. I felt Zephyr tense beside me. Dad, this is Zephyr, Zephyr. My father, Robert. Dad extended a hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Zephyr stepped forward to shake it. I held my breath, waiting for some sign of recognition, some indication that Dad could see through the disguise. Pleasure to meet you, son. Cassie's told us a lot about you. I have not. I said quickly. Not in words, maybe, but she lights up when she talks about home now. That's new. Dad's eyes were sharp despite the medication. You treating my daughter right? I am trying to be worthy of her, Zephyr said simply. Dad nodded approvingly. Good answer. Mom chose that moment to arrive with coffee and tension radiating from every line of her body. She looked at Zephyr with the expression of someone trying to solve a particularly difficult puzzle. You look different than I expected, she said finally. Mom, I warned. It's all right. Zephyr said quietly. Mrs. Morrison, I know this situation is unusual. I know you have concerns about your daughter's welfare. If you have questions, I am willing to answer them. Mom set down the coffee and studied him with the intensity of a scientist examining a new species, which I supposed wasn't far from the truth. Are you human? She asked bluntly. The question hung in the air like a bomb. Dad's monitor beeped a little faster. I opened my mouth to deflect, to lie, to do something to protect us both. But Zephyr straightened his shoulders and let his disguise flicker, just for a moment. Long, enough for the silver hair to show, for his skin to shimmer with that otherworldly luminescence, for his third eye to open and focus on my mother with ancient wisdom. No, he said simply. I am not. New beginnings and infinite possibilities. The silence that followed Zephyr's revelation lasted exactly 17 seconds. I know because I counted them, each one feeling like an eternity, while my mother processed the fact that her daughter was dating someone from another planet. Dad broke first. Well, I'll be damned. Robert, Mom said faintly, sinking into the bedside chair. What? It explains a lot. Remember when Cassie called last Christmas and said her roommate had never seen snow? We thought he was from Florida or something, but this makes more sense. I stared at my father, whose heart monitor was beeping steadily despite the fact that we just turned his worldview upside down. You're okay with this, honey? I'm 63 years old and I just had a heart attack. Life's too short to worry about what planet your boyfriend comes from. He looked at Zephyr with genuine curiosity. What's it like up there? Beautiful, Zephyr said, his voice soft with memory, but lonely. Your daughter has shown me that home is not always a place. Sometimes it is a person. Mom made a small sound, somewhere between a laugh and a sob. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. I know, I said, moving to kneel beside her chair. Mom, I know how it sounds, but he's good for me. He makes me happy. He's not human, Cassie. So what? The words came out sharper than I intended. But I was tired of pretending this was something to be ashamed of. He's kind and thoughtful, and he loves me. Isn't that what matters? What about children? What about a future? What about letting me decide what my future looks like? I stood up, taking Zephyr's hand in mine. I'm 28 years old. I have a good job, a nice apartment, and someone who loves me exactly as I am. That's more than a lot of people can say. Cassie's right, Helen. Dad said from the bed. Look at her. When's the last time you saw her this happy? Mom looked between me and Zephyr, her expression cycling through disbelief, concern, and something that might have been the beginning of acceptance. You really love her. With both my hearts. Zephyr said simply, both your never mind. I don't want to know. She rubbed her temples. This is going to take some getting used to. You don't have to understand it, I said. You just have to accept that it's my choice to make. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Patel with Dad's test results. The news was, good minimal damage, excellent response to treatment. Home in a few days with some lifestyle modifications. As the doctor left, Mom caught Zephyr's arm. Can I talk to you? Privately? I started to protest, but Zephyr squeezed my hand reassuringly. Of course. They stepped out into the hallway, leaving me alone with Dad, who was watching me with knowing eyes. You're scared, he observed, terrified. What if she can't accept this? What if she tries to make me choose? Your mother loves you, Cassie. She might not understand your choices, but she loves you. And that young man of yours, alien or not, he clearly adores you. How can you be so calm about this? Dad smiled. When I was your age, I fell in love with a girl whose father thought I was completely wrong for her. Too poor, too young, too irresponsible. But she chose me anyway, and we've had 40 years of happiness together. He paused. Love is love, honey. The packaging might be different, but the feelings are the same. 20 minutes later, Mom and Zephyr returned. She looked like she'd been crying, but there was something lighter in her expression. We're going to try, she said, looking at me. I don't understand it, and I'm going to need time to process it, but we're going to try. What did you say to her? I asked Zephyr later, after we'd settled into the hotel for the night. I told her about the first time I saw you laugh, about the way you hum when you're concentrating, about how you always make sure I eat when I'm working too hard on my research. He pulled me close, and I could feel the tension finally leaving his body. I told her that loving you has made me more than I was before. And what did she say? That if I ever hurt you, she will find a way to make me regret it, regardless of what planet I come from. I laughed. That sounds like Mom. We spent the next few days in Ohio, helping Dad adjust to his new medications and cardiac diet, fielding visits from relatives who were curious about my mysterious boyfriend. Zephyr charmed them all, though he kept his disguise firmly in place around everyone, except my parents. On our last night, Mom pulled me aside. He's not what I pictured for you, she said. I know, but he looks at you like you hung the stars. She smiled. Literally, apparently. Mom, I'm trying. Cassie, I really am. It's just, this isn't the life I imagined for my daughter. I know, but it's the life I want. I took her hands. I'm happy, Mom. Really, truly happy. Isn't that worth something? She was quiet for a long moment. When you were little, you used to talk about marrying a prince. I guess I never imagined he'd be from another planet. Neither did I bring him for Christmas. She said suddenly, both of you, come home for Christmas. The flight back to our apartment felt different, lighter, like we'd crossed some invisible threshold and emerged into clearer air. So, I said as we unlocked our front door, that went better than expected. Your family is remarkable, Zephyr said, dropping his disguise with visible relief. I understand now why you were afraid of losing them. I wasn't afraid of losing them, I realized as I said it. I was afraid of having to choose between them and you. And now I know I don't have to. I turned to face him, this impossible, beautiful being who had somehow become my entire world. Zephyr, there's something I need to tell you. He went very still. What is it? I want to build a life with you, a real life. I want to meet your family, learn about your world, figure out how to make this work long term. I took a breath. I want to marry you. The smile that spread across his face was brighter than any star he'd ever rearranged for me. "Cassie Morrison, are you proposing to me? Maybe. Is that okay? Do your people even do marriage? We do something very similar. And yes, it is more than okay." He pulled me into his arms, lifting me off the ground and spinning me around our tiny living room. Yes, yes. 1,000 times yes. When he set me down, I was dizzy with joy and possibility. "So, what happens now?" "Now we figure it out as we go," he said, echoing the words I'd said to him weeks ago when this all began. Together, outside our window, the stars twinkled in their proper positions, unchanged and eternal. But inside our apartment, everything was different. We were different. We were home, and we were just getting started.